business and governance. Prof, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Alicia.
Look, Prof, I mean, the whole country's been on edge for quite some time now. What do you make of Standard & Poor's decision not to downgrade further?
Well, Alicia, let's accept it's a very good news day. I think everyone is pleased that the decision has been taken by Standard & Poor. Great sense of relief, albeit perhaps temporary, but nonetheless, we've got to make best use of it. I think what one applauds is the judgment call, which has been made by S&P, having weighed up the negative and the positive factors, because that's what they've got to do, and then arriving at a decision which then gives us a breathing space and in which we can address all sorts of issues which are still there under the surface, or indeed sometimes very, very visibly. But we've got this window of opportunity now, which we've been granted. And I think the important point is that we must use it.
Look, Prof, very interesting phrase there that you use, breathing space. What does this breathing space mean for the country's economic outlook? We know that, of course, they'd lowered the growth expectation even further to 0.8% from a projected 1.8%.
Well, look, that is part of the concern, which is reflected in the comments and in the decisions by the rating agencies, like indeed Standard & Poor. But what we've got to do in this breathing space is to take the issues and the programs and the projects to which we are committed, take them by the scruff of the neck and push them into implementation, visible implementation. We've got to use this breathing space wisely, and we've got to use it visibly, because in the first instance, we only have another 6 months before you and I will be debating this again.
Prof, I was about to say also, I mean, is this just a temporary reprieve? Because as you've just pointed out, we only have 6 months of how are we going to now make sure that the country's economy stabilizes within those 6 months?
Well, the fact that we've been able to fend the junk status off so far has a lot to do with the fact that over the past few months, there's been quite a collaborative exercise, as the Minister of Finance has emphasized, between government, labour and business. That's got to be sustained. It's got to be brought through to implementation, to in fact coherence, and in a visible way. I mean, yes, we've taken some wrong decisions which we now have to put right. But where we take the right decisions, we also market them better. I think we try to do certain things and hope that we don't have to hide them or at least put them in a high profile. We should be prepared. Where we have achievements, we've got to now be more visible about them. And say, look, yes, we've done certain things and we have certain timelines too. I think that's also important, that you don't have an open-ended commitment, so that you keep having to revisit that debate. So the important point is to use the breathing space as productively as we can over the next 6 months or so.
Look, Prof, after the Minister of Finance's announcement regarding the meeting with Fitch, Standard & Poor, the rand actually became firmer. What sort of reaction can we expect from the markets at the beginning of this week?
Well, I think they will reflect good news. I mean, that is what the rand does. When there's bad news, it goes down, and when there's good news, it goes up. But the important point which the Minister of Finance also made, because in a way we've been put on probation for another 6 months. That's really what it is.
And it's not a long time.
It's not a long time. So we've got to use it very productively, and we've got to play our cards smartly in the next 6 months. But as the Minister indicated, there are also political factors here. I like to say that when we talk about the GDP, it's not just the gross domestic product, it's also the gross domestic politics, and sometimes very gross. They're two sides of the same coin. And bearing in mind that there's an election, I just want to reinforce what the Minister of Finance said. Yes, it's going to be robust, it's going to be tough, and so forth, and the parties will have to say what they want to say, but let's try and do it in a way, bearing in mind this particular 6 months period, that we do not conduct the campaign in such a way that it sends out negative vibes, and that we come out of the campaign with our institutions strengthened, not weakened. Because one of the important points that Standard & Poor made was that we need to use our institutions productively and strongly. And one of the good points in South Africa is that we have got resilient institutions. And that's part of the evaluation and the perception of where South Africa has to go in the longer term.
Look, Prof, I mean, you just spoke about good and bad news here. I mean, before I let you go, I need you to detail to us how political unrest really affects the economic growth. A lot of people don't seem to understand the connection here.
The connection really, when it comes to decision making by investors, by the credit rating agencies and so forth, is the issue of uncertainty. Why you want what they call a political cohesive setup is because it projects certainty, that we know what the government is going to do next, and that enjoys support among the key stakeholders. So the bottom line, apart from the issue of the budget and our public finances, and we want to get the growth rate up, these all are a cohesive challenge, which the bottom line is you must be able to send out a message that we have a vision for the future under the broad national development plan, but there are all sorts of subsectors which we are now seeking to implement. Let's send out a message. We're going to get on with it, both collectively and individually, to turn this economy around, so that, as I like to say also, I don't want the keys of our future to constantly be in the hands of the credit rating agencies. They must be in our hands, so that we can turn the economy around and improve our investment rating, not worry about not being reduced down to a junk status. And that's how we have to productively use the next 6 months to begin to send out those positive messages.
Look, positive messages like what, Prof, to try and turn our economy around? What needs to happen first?
We need to take issues like, for example, if you take Operation Fakisa, I mean, where there are important projects. If we take the medium-term strategic plan, which is the 5-year vision of the National Development Plan,
yes.
If we take these discussions between the government and the private sector in particular, where certain projects and programs have to emerge, they must emerge in a concrete way that say to the country, we're turning this thing around and we're all involved in helping to turn them around, so that it's not just an elitist issue, that the man in the street says there will be more jobs, there will be more growth. I can look forward to better times. So all this goes beyond the credit rating agencies. We've got to do these things for the longer term because they are the right things to do. We're just under pressure at the moment to make sure that we do them, so that we can, in 6 months' time, send a positive message out about what we have achieved.
Do you think we can achieve a positive outlook within 6 months, Prof?
I think if we see what we've done in the past few months, when a few months ago, I think the view was that we would be downgraded.
Yes.
Then I think that's a very good base from which to launch the next stage. And it's very much in our hands. Don't look to the world economy or to the credit rating agencies to bail us out. We must turn the situation around. And that is the message that I think is coming through to all of us.
Thank you so much for your input here. That is economist Professor Raymond Parson from the Northwest University School of Business and Governance.